Hello everyone, I'm Wave, and today I thought I would talk about one of my favorite types of interactions in visual novels, being the home setting. In most visual novels, regardless of whether you're going to high school or anything else, there's oftentimes a sort of downtime in between when you're out and about walking around the town and when the player character returns home. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this kind of tonal shift in writing, so let's get into it. So as I said, regardless of whether, it's your stereotypical school setting or maybe it's something else, whether that be you're in some sort of rural village with various kinds of ghosts and yokai, maybe you're a self-acclaimed evil scientist who's going to go ahead and rule the world someday. There is this sort of tonal shift between when you're out and about talking to people that you hardly know, and once you come home, or the place that's closest to being a home for the player character, and you're able to talk amongst people that the player character is more familiar with, people that maybe they've known for their entire life, and just like the very different tonal shift in writing sense, in being able to write between characters that you're less familiar with and more familiar with. I think obviously, depending on which kind of visual novel it is, you're going to see less or more of this sort of shift. I really do feel like I vibe with a lot of the visual novels that are able to really hit or like land that level of detail when it comes to coming home and then being able to talk amongst characters that you feel very familiar and are very comfortable with talking to. So I think, for some examples, or I guess we could talk about maybe something rather than talking about, like a key game, we could talk about maybe something like Hoshizora no Memoria, and being able to handle coming home from school, and you have the aunt, you have the little sister, and I know people don't really like Chinami. I think it's actually kind of interesting how they wrote her, in that she is this sort of nuisance or annoyance, where she has her own specific theme that kind of elevates the tone of with the music, where it's very kind of repetitive in order to try and invoke a certain emotion within the reader and make you be like, oh yeah, this is my annoying little sister. I think they landed that pretty well. But we could talk about maybe something what I really like about maybe my Tetsu is where you're able to go around the town. The whole point of my Tetsu is to quote unquote save the town, because the aircraft company is going to start polluting the rivers and the water around the city once they start development of a giant factory. And so you're going around the town, you're kind of sightseeing, seeing what's going around. But regardless of the fact that the player character has barely been in the city for all that long, whenever you return back to the place that you're staying at, you're able to talk to Hibiki, being your younger sibling. You've got your older sibling, and you've got Hachiroku, which does start to become your part of your family. Over time, you become familiar with these characters, and whenever somebody does show up to your house, even when it is something like Paulette, who is somebody that you are not regularly interacting with, it's this level of intimacy and being able to have very one-on-one talks that feel different in vibe from when you're going to be out and about walking around. Another game we could talk about, a lot of people are going to probably agree with me on this, and that part of the reason why people love Steins Gate is because that's not necessarily a house, but if you think about the lab, that is pretty much filling a similar role, in that whenever you're at the lab, you have this whole group of characters that are all familiar with one another, the quote unquote club or a meeting point, and everyone's able to kind of be together on something that they all kind of agree on and are just buddy friendly vibes. And in a way, I would say the lab from Steins Gate acts as a functional house that really brings together all of the various lab members and makes it to where it feels very much like a family. I figured this would be an interesting topic to talk about, because when I was reading Clear, there was a particular route that felt very cozy, where you're able to take in a character that was living on the streets and being able to give them a food and shelter, and over time was able to bond and grow and take them in as a sort of family member. Overall, I really do like the kind of slice of life cozy vibes of that sort of writing style, that whenever you're in a visual novel and you have much longer scenes where you're at home. One, because I feel like it's a lot more interesting than the copious amounts of high school setting that you get throughout a lot of visual novels, but also just because, I don't know, I really do like the different tonal shift in being able to have more like one-on-one personal conversations with characters. I do think that it is very interesting being able to see the different shift in writing when you do get into these types of scenarios. But yeah, those have been my brief thoughts on a type of writing style or like tonal shift in visual novels that I personally enjoy. I've been Wave, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.